Welcome back. You're now watching the lifestyle segment on the Weekend Show brought to you by Holocrunch Popcorn. The Not Too Young to Run bill, or also like we call it the age reduction bill, was one of the landmark decisions which I think my generation can be proud of, where young people advocated and pushed for the age of people running for elections to be reduced to accommodate more young people, and this has been achieved. However, we realize that it may appear that some of the numbers are reducing, or the fact that we can run doesn't mean we can afford it, or could party structures be a problem which is affecting young people in participating actively in politics. However, with the 2023 elections coming up in a couple of weeks, what should we look out for? What's the role of young people? And what are the questions we should be asking? And how can we be actively involved? And having this conversation with me, I have Mark Amaza, the Senior Communications Officer of YIGA Africa. Welcome to the Weekend Show, Mark.
Hi, good morning.
It's been a pleasure having a conversation with you before the show started. And so we pretty much will just continue that, because even before all of this, you've been one of the leading voices on social media advocating for accountability, good governance, and also for young people. It's another election year. How do you think young people are faring so far?
I think so far we have seen a lot of enthusiasm from young people. We have seen a lot of, and it's reflecting in the voter registration numbers. We have added 12 million voters to the register. That's from the end of July, when INEC concluded its continuous voter registration, and the majority have been young people. Excuse me. So that gives us hope that that shows that young people are very eager to participate. Of course, registering to vote is not enough. They have to also collect their PVCs and eventually vote. And this is one of the things that we at YIGA Africa and other CSs are also very, very focused on, in getting young people to collect their PVCs and to come out and vote. This is very, very critical to reversing the trend of a declining voter turnout in Nigeria. And as a young country, this is a country where the median age is 18. We need more young people to participate, because we participating in democracy, which starts with elections or with voting, is deciding what our lives and our future will look like. So we need to participate. Our goal at YIGA Africa is to ensure at least 60% of registered young people or young voters turn out to vote, and that can really change the outcome of elections.
I like the fact that YIGA always prioritizes and also can pivot. And so now the goal is to push for at least 60% of young people to vote. Do you have confidence in the government and INEC's preparedness for this election so far?
So we have hope that INEC will deliver. We believe INEC has done a lot of let me use the word reflection on its preparation from the 2019 elections, and it keeps seeing improvements in off-cycle elections. And that's one thing I'll give INEC credit for. They continue to improve on their processes. And the benefit of off-cycle elections allows them to fine-tune their processes in terms of how they organize elections. We've seen, like, and that's one of the reasons, for example, even from the passing of the Electoral Act in February, allows for INEC to get funding early, has allowed INEC to test electoral technology around, from the BVAS to electronic transmission of results, and making sure that they do put all that in place, because they're not going to scale it. It's not just going to be election in one state. It's going to be election across the country, 179,000 polling units. So INEC is making efforts, and I want to give them that. We have that confidence that they will deliver.
Okay, so I like that you brought the electoral amendment here, because that's my next question. Most Nigerians who may not be involved in politics and in that space have been hearing about this, and I do give kudos to the CSOs and also the president for signing the electoral amendment into law. And it also makes me remember Ario Daniel of blessed memory, who had a 10-minute segment on this show constantly speaking about that act. But for the average Nigerian, how does this BVAS and electronic transmission of results help build confidence in the process?
Okay, so for one, the BVAS which is biometric verification allows for the biometric verification of voters. So there's no more use of incidence forms. You have to be verified before you vote, using not just your PVC, but also biometric, other biometric factors such as your thumbprint, which is very, very important. So now voters must be accredited by the machine before they vote, which ensures only registered voters and the actual voters are voting. Secondly, from the electronic transmission of results, we are going to see a case where we already saw that, for example, in Ekiti and Osun State, where its results were being transmitted from polling unit level to INEC's result viewing portal, allowing for citizens like you and I to be able to look at it and then compare, and able to do their own tallying of the results and compare with the final outcome, which increases accountability. A lot of times we've heard that the electoral manipulation or result manipulation doesn't happen at polling unit level, happens at the collation level, because voters a lot of times stay back and watch the counting of votes, but they are not there when it's being collated, when the results from their polling unit is being brought to those of other polling units, and then from their ward to those of other wards, and all the way up. So it's a game changer. And leveraging on that, Yaga Africa has deployed an electronic election results analysis dashboard, where we download this polling unit results, we analyze it, and we display the data in near real time. And that has also allowed us to give feedback to INEC on how effective the electronic transmission of results is and how they can improve on it. We released a report in September of deploying the ERAD in Ekiti and Osun State. So this is how, and by doing so, we have seen how the acceptability of the results from those two states was very, very high, because citizens were able to see how the results are coming in, able to hold INEC accountable for the final results.
Talking about accountability, this just reminded me of when I think the PDP had their primaries in Lagos, and Banky W, Banky W ran for primaries, and the votes were counted, and he won. And next thing, another name was submitted. One way or the other, they had a rerun, and he won. But I think something that played the major role was technology. People were able to record and make videos of when the primaries was done and when it was counted, and I think that helped. And so for voters who are usually scared of the fact that after we vote, by the time the result reaches the INEC office, it will change, what can Nigerians do to protect their votes and ensure accountability on the day of the elections?
Well, so for one, I would say when you vote, the law doesn't prohibit you from staying back and watching the counting. So you should do that. I also encourage citizens to sign up on the INEC results viewing portal as soon as possible, and have that account ready so you're able to see polling unit results come in, whether it's enough for the presidential election, for the National Assembly, or for state assembly, all the results as they come in after February 25th, and also after March 11th. Also, ask them to follow ERAD, Yaga Africa's ERAD, so it's erad.ng, where we are scaling up the project I mentioned earlier, employing, having data clerks come in, having results being downloaded and analyzed and being displayed in near real time. And all these ways we can hold INEC accountable on the results that they are going to announce.
I love that. So before I let you go, let's talk about Nigeria and you as a Nigerian. We've seen unemployment levels soar, we've seen inflation levels soar, we've seen insecurity affect the country. What questions should Nigerians be asking of the candidates who are running? What do we expect to see as a priority in the next administration?
So the priorities we expect of the next administration, I think everyone knows. We all, like you said, economic issues, security. I'll add a feeling of unity. We continue to be a country, but not yet fully a nation, and that should also be a priority for us as citizens. So I think the questions that voters should be asking is, of all the candidates that are running, is what are they going to focus on when they should get in office? And it's not just for those who are running for the president, but for every office. Every single office is very, very important. We have a tendency to focus on who is running for the top job, and then we ignore those who are running for legislative positions. But every office is important. So what are their top priorities? And then importantly, how do they intend to solve or approach those problems? The hows are as important as the what. it's not just enough to say this is what we what the solution will be, but how we intend to achieve that solution.
Yeah.
And then when you look at the answers you get, you know, which answers do you think are most realizable? Which ones make most sense to you? Which of these candidates has a tendency or a track record, whether it's track record or even be able to, of if they whether they've been in government or private sector, track record of being able to deliver, also are likely to deliver.
Yeah.
And it's also important that we also look at personality in terms of issues around integrity. Those are very, very important because the end shouldn't just justify the means. It shouldn't justify the means. It's also important that we get people into government who we believe have integrity, and because being in government comes with a lot of pressures. And if people do not have a moral backbone, they will easily capitulate or bend the rules and bring us back to square one.
Yeah, let's talk about insecurity during the elections. It's rather unfortunate that every election cycle, someone dies on the election day, and in most cases, you have young Nigerians who are serving corps members who are sent to these places, and so there's the thuggery. Yes, it has reduced to an extent, but in recent times, we've heard of INEC offices being burnt down, we've heard of police stations being burnt down, especially in the southeastern part of Nigeria. What do you think should be done about this so it doesn't just become a numbers game or a percentage that, well, at least we just lost only 2 people? Every life matters. Everybody has some family member. But this is a big issue and concern. We saw videos in Lagos, I think, where in some places people were not even being allowed to register to vote because they didn't want it to influence. What's your take on security during the elections and how that could be fixed?
So I think the spate of attacks on INEC offices is worrisome, and it should be for everybody, because it can severely impact how the elections are conducted. And as we approach the elections, it's very, very important that all stakeholders, INEC, security agencies, police, military, all the security agencies, civil society organizations, prioritize how to secure the elections, provide enough adequate security for the elections. Which, like you said, this shouldn't happen again. This trend shouldn't happen again. And if anything, we can look at history of violence in elections, of electoral violence, and even trends of how things are going to be able to, very large extent, predict where and where will be the hotspots, and design measures, security measures, that will address these issues. So if, for example, there are certain states we know that have always had electoral violence, how do we approach it this time? We shouldn't just wait until it happens and then act surprised. We can look at that pattern and put in place those adequate measures. Or it could even be those that are not necessarily electoral violence, but where there's already violence that could impact elections. For example, areas where there's banditry. If communities are being bedeviled by bandits, it will impact the ability of INEC to deploy election materials there, to deploy workers there on election day, and which means those communities will not get to participate in elections. All of these things should be taken into account, and that adequate security needs to be put in place.
Mark Amaza, Senior Communications Officer, Yaga Africa, thanks for joining us on the Weekend Show and for sharing your views and insight. It's been very insightful. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me.
We'll take a quick break, and when we return, we'll be discussing my New Year resolutions, goal setting, and how to enter into the new year. However, it was extremely important that we discuss political or election issues on the lifestyle segment because it affects every single one of you watching who is of voting age, because your choices in the next couple of months will determine the next 4 to 8 years for you. We'll take a quick break and more on the lifestyle segment after this break.